Okay, so you've gotten to the end of your swatch or your pattern or whatever you might be making, and you've cut the tail of your yarn from the working yarn. Doesn't need to be real long, as long as it's not a major thing anyway, but something minor like this, it doesn't need to be real long. Unlike in knitting where you need a lot more of a tail than this, but this isn't knitting, so I'll get to that later on. So what do you do now? Well, you're going to need a yarn needle. They come in different sizes. It's not the same thing as a sewing needle, mind you. It's a different thing because it's thicker. I mean, even next to the yarn you can probably see that it's pretty thick. All things considered, it's got a rounded tip so you don't have to worry about hurting yourself on it. And if need be, you can use a yarn threader, or if you're skilled enough to manage without one, then awesome. I'll show you how you work one if you've never seen how to work one. You just put the hook through the eye of the needle, like that. Put the hook on the threader around the yarn, pull the needle over it, and tug it through. However, I think they're kind of unnecessary because I know how to do it without one. You just fold your yarn in half, like this, get it to the eye of the yarn needle and just push it through and tug it the rest of the way, like that. It's really easy both ways. It doesn't make a difference either way that you want to do it. So, I mean, depending on the thickness of your yarn, you might need a bigger yarn needle. Usually they come in a set of 3 sizes typically, so you should be good to go. But anyway, so, got your yarn threaded through here. Here's your final loop that's still attached to the hook. Bring your yarn needle around and feed it through that loop and pull it through. And once you've done that, just give it a quick little gentle tug, like so. Not too tight because you don't want it to start bunching up, but see, now you have that nice corner. But now what do you do with this? You don't just chop it off because otherwise it's going to unravel on you. There's different methods of weaving in the ends. Personally, this is how I do it with crocheting. Again, it's different when you're knitting, but for crocheting, this is usually enough to suffice, so this should be good. So you see your little upside down V's in the stitches here. They're pretty easy to see if you look at your single crochet work. If you're working with double crochets, it's the same general idea, but anyhow, just feed your yarn needle underneath the little V's. Don't go through the stitches all the way through the back or anything. This is just through the top layer where the little V's are. Just go underneath and behind those. And gently pull it through. You don't want to go too hard, otherwise you're going to bunch it up. And some people stop at just going underneath a few stitches. I like to make sure my work is very, very secure because I'm paranoid that way. So I go through more of them. I cut this long enough to be able to basically go through the entire row. It's not really necessary, it's just how I do it. You can do it however you want to, but every time you do a project, you're going to eventually have to weave in the ends. So it's good to get acquainted with this, so it's good practice. Give it a little tug to give it some slack, and there you go. You've weaved in your ends. Then you just trim the little piece there, and you're done. And same goes for the original end that you did this with. You just feed the yarn onto it, onto your needle. Oops. Then the little V's at the bottom edge, just go right through them. Same exact way, just from the other side. And you just go right underneath, right along as you go. You can do it as little as 1 stitch at a time. You can go through a bunch of them at one time. It doesn't matter, it all works out the same way when you're done. Sometimes I find it's easier just to go through a couple stitches at a time, like on the original edge, like this. I find it easier to go through more than just a couple when it's the bound off edge, but this is a little trickier because they're tighter from where your chain was. And still is, obviously, but Just go right on through, like so. Give it a little tug, and you'll just snip it right there down to the fabric. Don't cut any of the stitches around, just the actual yarn piece itself that's hanging out there, and that's all there is to it. And obviously with single crochet, it's going to roll a little bit like this. This is normal, so that's typical behavior for single crochet work. Other stitches don't do it so much, but yeah. Anyway, that's how you weave end ends.